Battle of Vienna, the day the Ottomans fell. What happens when the largest army in Europe surrounds a city with only 10,000 defenders and starts digging tunnels beneath its walls? Why did the Ottoman Empire, undefeated and unstoppable, suddenly find itself outmaneuvered by a Polish king with feathered wings on his back? And how did a desperate city signal for help using rockets from its cathedral tower? While its citizens starved, its walls crumbled, and its commander threatened death to anyone who refused to work? So grab your sword, saddle your horse, and let's dive in. Once upon a time, specifically in 1676, the Ottoman Empire and the Austrians were enjoying a rare moment of peace. The Treaty of Vasvar had ended the Austro-Turkish War in 1664, and Grand Vizier Ahmed Kuprulu was content with the spoils. But when Kuprulu died, the Ottoman Empire handed the reins to Kara Mustafa Pasha, a man whose dislike for Austria was so intense he probably sneered at Schnitzel. Kara Mustafa wasn't just anti-Austrian, he was fanatically so. And when peace negotiations in 1682 failed, he saw his chance. Meanwhile, France, ever the mischievous neighbor, whispered sweet encouragements into the Ottoman ear. Go west, young empire. Austria, already juggling a rebellion from Hungarian Protestant nobles led by Emmerich Thukeli, was about as stable as a three-legged stool in a windstorm. Thukeli seized the highlands of Upper Hungary, and the Ottomans, delighted, turned this rebellion into a full-blown alliance. On January 2, 1683, war was declared. The Ottomans were coming. Despite all the chest-thumping, the Ottoman army moved with the urgency of a sleepy tortoise. It wasn't until summer that they reached the border. This gave the Austrians time to panic, pray, and prepare. Enter King Jan III Sobieski of Poland, who had been flirting with France but ultimately signed a defensive pact with the Holy Roman Empire on March 31, 1683. The cavalry was coming, eventually. When the Ottoman army reached Belgrade, Sultan Mehmed IV handed command to Kara Mustafa and promptly swapped his armor for hunting gear. Because nothing says, I believe in you, like abandoning your army for deer. On June 25th, Kara Mustafa reached Székesfehérvár and dropped a bombshell. Forget the frontier fortresses. We're marching straight to Vienna. His commanders blinked. The Austrians blinked. Even the horses probably blinked. Duke Charles V of Lorraine, commander of the Austrian field army, had just 33,000 men. He tried to distract the Ottomans by besieging Neuheisel, but it flopped. He retreated to Rob, fortified by the brilliant engineer Georg Rimpler. But on July 1st, the Tatars swam across the Rob River 10 miles upstream. Charles, fearing a flank attack, left a small garrison and fell back toward Vienna. Near Petronell, the Tatars clashed with Charles's rearguard. After some confusion, they were routed. But they weren't done. For the next 2 months, they ravaged the countryside like a biblical plague. Villages burned, monasteries crumbled, and the land around Vienna became a horror show. Historian Eckhard Eichhoff called it an apocalyptic storm. Meanwhile, Kara Mustafa was still in Rob, plagued by doubt. He sent a messenger to the Sultan asking for permission to attack Vienna. The 7-day delay that followed was a gift to the defenders. With the Ottomans dragging their feet, Emperor Leopold I appointed Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg to lead the defense. Then he fled the city on July 7th, followed by 80,000 citizens. Thanks, boss. Vienna wasn't new to Ottoman attention. It had survived a siege in 1529. Now, Georg Rimpler, who had witnessed the 21-year siege of Candia, knew exactly what to expect. Turkish miners, subterranean warfare, and relentless artillery. He focused defenses on the southwest and southern sides, where attack was most likely. Vienna was a bastion fort, with thick, low walls of earth and stone. Rimpler added embrasures for protected artillery fire, retrenchments in palisades on bastions and ravelins, palisaded traverses to absorb artillery damage. Faussabray, lower rampart in the ditch. Caponiers, covered passageways for musket fire. Young and old worked day and night. Powder and food were rushed in. Refugees poured through the gates. Vienna became a fortress of steel, stone, and desperation. Finally, on July 14th, Kara Mustafa arrived at the gates of Vienna with a force estimated between 110,000 and 200,000 men, including 20,000 janissaries, the elite Ottoman infantry. Inside the city, Starhemberg had just 10,000 regular troops and a militia of terrified bakers, blacksmiths, and candle makers. The odds? About 10 to 1. On that very day, a messenger reached King Jan Sobieski, who immediately began mustering the Polish army. The cavalry was coming, and this time, they meant business. Now pause for a sec. Step into the extraordinary. Subscribe to Eccentric Digital Pixel. Welcome to the wild frontier of creativity, where pixels pulse with imagination and every frame tells a story you've never seen before. We don't follow trends, we bend reality. Get exclusive access to jaw-dropping digital creations. Be the first to witness new drops by turning on notifications. Don't just scroll, experience the pixel revolution. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to never miss a masterpiece. Because normal is boring, and you were born to see the world differently. By late July 1683, Kara Mustafa Pasha had a plan. March with 50,000 men and reach Vienna's gates by August 20. But like all great plans, it unraveled in the mud and chaos of reality. The Ottomans made camp west of Vienna, their tents stretching like a sea of silk and steel. On July 15th, Kara Mustafa sent an envoy to the city with a polite little note: capitulate, convert to Islam, and pay tribute, or else. Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, commander of Vienna's defense, responded with the diplomatic equivalent of, "Not today, Sultan." The Ottoman guns roared to life, but they had a problem. According to historian Christopher Duffy, their artillery was mostly medium caliber, and they lacked heavy siege guns, breaching Vienna's thick bastion walls from a distance, like trying to crack a walnut with a feather. So the Ottomans did what any self-respecting besiegers would do. They dug trenches, ditches, tunnels, a subterranean labyrinth inching toward the city. And thanks to the burnt but not obliterated suburbs, they could dig dangerously close to the walls. By July 16th, Vienna was completely surrounded. The city was cut off, isolated, and desperate. Communication with the outside world? Left to brave messengers who swam the Danube at night or tiptoed through enemy lines. Some made it. Others were caught, interrogated, and tortured. One such messenger, captured on July 18th, spilled the beans, literally, revealing the defender numbers to Kara Mustafa. The Ottomans pressed forward with 3 trench groups, targeting the Lowell Bastion, Berg Ravelin, and Berg Bastion. On the night of July 26 to 23, the first battery opened fire. While the surface turned to chaos, the Ottoman miners went to work below. On July 24th, the first 2 mines exploded opposite the Lowell and Berg bastions. The Viennese responded with basement listeners, men posted to detect tapping and digging. They began countermining, but their miners were fewer and less experienced. On July 25th, Ottoman mines damaged the palisades. In a counterattack, Georg Rimpler, Vienna's brilliant engineer, was wounded, his left arm shattered. He died on August 3rd, and Vienna lost its architectural brain. The Viennese tried their own mine on July 26th, but it fizzled. Meanwhile, the Ottomans kept collapsing palisades in covered ways. On July 30th, a mine near the Berg Bastion was followed by a Janissary assault. The defenders were forced to retreat to the covered way. The Ottomans installed a battery of 30 guns before the Lowell Bastion and obliterated the Cavalier, the elevated artillery platform. The Viennese scrambled to salvage their cannons and cut new embrasures into the ruins. Far from the front, Emperor Leopold I was in Passau, organizing reinforcements. The siege was bleeding gold. Pope Innocent XI opened his purse to halt Muslim expansion. The imperial diet chipped in. Bavarian reinforcements arrived on July 23rd, and Sobieski was gathering his Polish army. Charles of Lorraine positioned his field army at Jedlice, north of Vienna, skirmishing with Tatars and securing key terrain. But he couldn't stop the Ottomans from capturing nearby cities and strongholds. Back in the Ottoman camp, Kara Mustafa finally received a reply from Sultan Mehmed IV. And it wasn't a love letter. The Sultan was bewildered. "Vienna?" I said Hungary. The Grand Vizier was now under pressure. On July 27th, Vienna mobilized every able-bodied man. Prices for food and medicine were fixed. Corpses piled up. Orders were issued for disposal. Supplies dwindled on both sides. The Ottomans had eaten through their provisions and had to haul supplies from Ofen, Budapest, thanks to Tatar raids that had scorched the countryside. Messengers became rare. Those who dared demanded 200 ducats, roughly $100,000 to $150,000 today. The most famous was Jerzy Franciszek Kolczycki, a Polish noble who disguised himself as a Turk, snuck out, and returned on August 17th with news. A relief army of nearly 70,000 men was coming. Legend says he used his reward to open Vienna's first café, brewing coffee from beans left by the Ottomans. Scholars today say, cute story, but probably a myth. By August 3rd, the Ottomans conquered a stretch of the covered way. The defenders abandoned the palisades before the ravelin. The Ottomans built descents into the ditch, launching the second stage of the siege. They tunneled opposite the bastions and advanced toward the ravelin. The Viennese used Rimpler's caponiers, low-lying passageways, to unleash deadly fire. They built redoubts from loose earth. One tunnel was destroyed, burying 30 Ottomans alive, but the siege pressed on. On August 8th, the Janissaries reached the city wall. Mines exploded under the bastions and ravelin, causing breaches. The Viennese barely barred them in time. They launched sorties to destroy tunnels. All failed. Many brave defenders died. As trenches turned red, bloody flux, a deadly disease causing bloody diarrhea, broke out in Vienna. It spared no one. Starhemberg fell ill on August 11th, recovering 10 days later. By then, he had conscripted every man, even the sick and frail. Refusal meant death. Vienna was bleeding, burning, and barely holding on. But the relief army was coming, and soon the thunder of hooves would echo across the hills. Despite losing 3 mines to Viennese countermeasures, the Ottomans clawed their way to the center of the ditch by mid-August. But Vienna wasn't about to roll over. On August 15th, the defenders launched a furious sortie, storming the ditch like vengeful ghosts. They slaughtered the Ottoman troops, torched their earthworks, smashed support beams, and blew up every mine they could find. It was a devastating blow. The Ottomans took 12 days to reclaim the lost ground. For the next 2 weeks, the siege devolved into a bloody stalemate. Mines exploded, Janissaries charged, Viennese launched counter-sorties. Both sides bled, but Vienna, with fewer men, bled harder. Then came the rain. In the last week of August, the siege turned into a mud fight. Trenches collapsed, boots vanished, morale sank. Starhemberg, ever the iron-willed commander, ordered a second line of defense behind the city walls, stretching from Berg Bastion to Lowell Bastion. Vienna was bracing for the worst. Outside the city, Emperor Leopold I waited for reinforcements that trickled in like molasses. On August 24th, Charles V of Lorraine left Jedlicy and marched toward Tulln, the rendezvous point. But the real cavalry, King Jan III Sobieski, had left Krakow 2 weeks late on August 14th. Vienna was hanging by a thread. On September 1st, a messenger reached the city with news. Help is coming. He was sent back with a desperate plea. Hurry, we're dying. Food ran out. The Ottomans could forage scraps. Vienna could not. Hunger gnawed at the city. To signal their plight, the Viennese launched rockets from St. Stephen's Cathedral every night, a fiery SOS to the approaching army. Meanwhile, Starhemberg pushed his people to finish the inner defenses, redoubts, palisades, parapets, built with desperation and prayer. The Ottomans kept digging. The Viennese tried to destroy the tunnels, mostly failed. By September 2-3, Ottoman trenches embraced the ravelin like a python. Their mine tunnels reached within 2-3 meters of the city walls. The curtain wall between the bastions was now the last line. Ottomans reinforced their saps with planks, tree trunks, and sandbags. The Austrians responded with earthenware hand grenades, medieval DIY explosives. The tunnels became a subterranean battlefield. Miners from both sides collided in the dark, muddy passages. Cramped, blind, and armed with melee weapons, they fought like trapped animals. It was brutal, claustrophobic, and relentless. A war beneath the war. The Council of War, August 31st. On August 31st, Charles of Lorraine and Jan Sobieski met at Oberhollabrunn. Despite past rivalries for the Polish throne, they got along surprisingly well. Charles ceded overall command to Sobieski without fuss. 5 days later, their armies, joined by Bavaria, Saxony, and other German states, assembled near Tulln. According to Christopher Duffy, the relief force numbered 68,000 men, 21,000 imperial troops, 20,000 Poles, 18,000 Bavarians and Saxons, plus smaller contingents. In early September, a mine detonated under the curtain wall. It was effective, but debris fell into the ditch, slowing the Ottoman assault. The Viennese quickly barred the gap with palisades. Another explosion tore down part of the Berg Bastion. Janissaries climbed it, but the slope was too steep. After 2 hours of relentless fire, they retreated. The breach was sealed with sandbags and chevaux de frise, spiked barriers, under cover of night. Inside the Ottoman camp, morale was crumbling. Still, the Ottomans tried again. 2 more mines exploded at Lowell Bastion. Another assault, another repulse. Inside Vienna, only 4,000 able-bodied men remained. Artillerymen refused to fight without a massive pay raise. Citizens only worked under threat of death. A Viennese traitor informed Kara Mustafa, "The relief army is close." The Grand Vizier panicked. On September 7th, he mustered his troops, held a council of war, and scouted the terrain for Sobieski's approach. The Ottomans conquered the Fossbray, the lower rampart, and prepared 5 massive mines under the city walls. Fuses were ready. Then, on the heights of the Kahlenberg, the relief army appeared. The relief army crossed the Danube via a pontoon bridge. At Charles V's urging, they left their baggage train and marched through the Vienna woods, a nearly impassable terrain. It was arduous, slow, and supplyless. Only a few artillery pieces made it. The men marched 2 days without provisions. But there were no Ottoman fortifications on the Kahlenberg. The path was open. The cavalry was coming. On the night of September 11th, the Allied army, Poles, Germans, Austrians, camped atop the Kahlenberg, already arranged in battle formation. They slept like warriors, knowing that sunrise would bring either glory or ruin. In the dead of night, Charles of Lorraine received a note from Starhemberg, Vienna's iron-willed commander. It read, "There is no time to lose, my lord, no time to lose at all." Kara Mustafa, sensing the storm, left 10,000, 15,000 men in the trenches and deployed the rest at the foot of the hill. The stage was set. The sun rose. The Allies marched. Left flank, Imperial Field Army under Charles of Lorraine. Center, troops from Saxony, Bavaria, Franconia, Swabia, and other German states. Right flank, the Polish army under King John III Sobieski, including the legendary Winged Hussars. Facing them were 80,000 Ottoman soldiers. Center, Kara Mustafa and his elite troops. Right, Moldavian and Wallachian vassals. Left, Tatar cavalry. The Allies advanced slowly and steadily, like a tidal wave of steel. The left wing made contact first, clashing with Janissaries at Nussdorf. After a fierce struggle, they drove them back. For 6 hours the battle raged, mostly on the left flank. Charles V and his men reached the Ottoman camp, then paused to let the Poles catch up. From his perch on the Kahlenberg, Sobieski watched. Then with a nod, he joined his troops. The army paused. Suspense hung in the air. Suddenly, the left flank stormed forward, before Charles could even give the order. The center followed, and the battlefield erupted. On the right flank, John III Sobieski gave the signal. The Winged Hussars, their backs adorned with feathered wings that whistled in the wind, charged down the slope. The ground declined gently, perfect for building momentum. They swept through the disordered Ottoman ranks like divine fury on horseback. Seeing this, the defenders of Vienna, battered and starving, launched a final sortie from the city. They surged into the Ottoman trenches with everything they had left. By sunset, the battle was over. The Ottoman army broke and fled. Kara Mustafa, wounded in the eye, joined the retreat. Vienna was saved. After the battle, the Poles turned to looting the Ottoman camp and found enormous treasures. Gold, silks, spices, the spoils of empire. Meanwhile, Charles of Lorraine, ever the cautious commander, kept his troops in battle order, unsure if the victory was truly secure. No one pursued the fleeing Ottomans. Inside Vienna, defenders inspected the damage and found 5 mines ready to explode. They had been seconds from annihilation. On September 13th, Emperor Leopold I rushed to Vienna and attended a victory mass at St. Stephen's Cathedral, the city's spiritual heart. Only on September 18th did the Polish and imperial troops begin to pursue the Ottomans. Kara Mustafa, humiliated and desperate, searched for someone to blame. He executed the governor of Ofen, Buda, accusing him of being the first to flee. But Sultan Mehmed IV knew the truth. On December 25th, when Kara Mustafa arrived in Belgrade, emissaries of the Sultan handed him a death warrant. He was strangled with a silk string, the traditional execution method for Ottoman officials. The siege was over. The empire had faltered, and Europe had turned the tide. Next up, the French invasion of Egypt. From Vienna's salvation to Napoleon's desert ambitions, history never sleeps. Before you go, If you enjoyed this epic tale of cavalry charges, cannon blasts, and imperial intrigue, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, click that notification bell, so you never miss another story of empires rising, falling, and colliding. More thrilling chapters await, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single one.